Welcome back, all you awakened savages. And if there's one video I wish someone had made for me in my 20s and 30s, this is the one. But really, who am I kidding? Even if I had it back then, I probably would have ignored it. Because like most men, I was trapped in the lie that emotions make you weak. See, as men, we're taught to fear our feelings, to bottle up the anger, hide the shame, swallow the fear. But let's be real about it. Those emotions don't just disappear, right? They become poison in your system, right? They turn into stress, silence, self-sabotage, right? They build walls between you and the people that you love. But what if you could do something different? What if you could turn that anger into fuel, shame into wisdom, fear into focus? Now, I'm not talking about wishful thinking here. This is the art of emotional alchemy, right? An ancient discipline lost in modern life. And we need it now more than ever, right? The greatest warriors and leaders, they didn't just control their emotions. They transformed them into strength, discipline, clarity, and action, right? And today I'm going to show you how. This is not any sugarcoating guru chat, no therapy talk, just practical tools, ancient wisdom that's grounded in science so that you can turn your heaviest emotions into your greatest power. Right? If you were like me, see from the time you could walk, you were taught to hide your emotions. Big boys don't cry. Keep it together. If you're angry, go to your room. Right? Don't be scared. Man up. Right? What does this teach you? That emotion is a liability, not a signal. That your feelings make you weak, unsafe, or unworthy of respect. So we learn to wear the mask. Right? Calm on the surface, fucking madness underneath. But your biology doesn't care about the mask. Right? So when you feel anger, shame, or fear, your body reacts instantly. Right? When it's anger, your sympathetic nervous system fires up. Right? The heart pounds, your breath gets shallow, the blood rushes to your fists and your jaw. You're ready to fight. Right? Your brain's logic center just goes offline. You become a reactor, not a responder. Right, and we look at shame. The same system triggers, but the energy moves inwards. Shoulders slump, eyes drop, muscles tighten around the gut. Right, your brain floods with cortisol and oxytocin. Right, an odd mix of stress and longing for acceptance. Right, shame isn't just embarrassment. It's the sense that you're fundamentally flawed, unworthy of love, success, or belonging. Right, and then we look at fear. Everything in your body says run or freeze. The heart races, hands sweat, chest tightens, right? Your mind looks through worst case scenarios, right? You get stuck, afraid to move, afraid to speak, afraid to act. And this is the thing, unfelt emotions don't just disappear, they mutate, right? Unprocessed anger turns into low-grade irritation, addiction, or even violence at other people or yourself. Unprocessed shame becomes self-sabotage, depression, or a drive to prove yourself forever and ever. Unprocessed fear, that becomes anxiety, control issues, procrastination, or the inability to commit at home, at work, in love, in life. Right? Culturally, it's a setup. Right? Boys are shamed for feeling too much. Men are ridiculed for being too soft. Right? You get praised for being stoic, but not for being present, honest, or real. Right? Most men end up with two choices: numb out with work, screen, or substances, or explode when the pressure's too high. But both paths steal your power. Right? You can't lead, love, or create from a place of emotional shutdown or chaos. Science now proves what you suppress gets stored in your body. Right? Unresolved emotions predict heart disease, high blood pressure, even chronic illness and pain. Emotion is not the enemy. It's the original GPS of your body and your soul. And when you ignore it, you will drift. When you explode, you will crash. When you learn to listen and channel it, you become unfucking breakable. Right? You can't alchemize what you refuse to feel, but you can learn. Every single man can. And when you do, you don't just heal yourself, you change the pattern for every man who comes after you. Let's break emotion down to its core, right? Emotion isn't weakness. It's energy in motion. Every feeling you have, anger, shame, fear, starts as a physical sensation. Your body feels the signal first. Tight chest, pounding heart, lump in your throat, a sick feeling in your gut. Why? Because emotion is your nervous system's way of scanning for threat, opportunity, or need. Right? Anger fires up your system for action. It says, a line has been crossed, stand up. If you listen, anger can give you the courage to set boundaries, speak your truth, protect what actually matters. But see, if you ignore that shit or you let it explode unchecked, it either gets buried or it burns your whole fucking life down. Right? And then we look at shame, which is the most misunderstood. It's your body's ancient way of keeping you from being cast out from the tribe. When you mess up, your system triggers shame to make you hide, fix, or reconnect. If that's left unchecked, shame becomes self-hatred and isolation. But see, in its healthy form, shame says learn, change, repair. Right? And we look at fear. That's your oldest survival tool. Right? It's your warning bell. Pay attention, danger ahead. Real fear keeps you alive. But see, modern life triggers it constantly. Work, money, relationships, the future. Unworked fear leads to paralysis or just constant anxiety. When you face that shit head on, it sharpens your focus, heightens your senses, and prepares you to act with precision. Right? And this is what the ancients and modern science both agree on. You cannot think your way out of emotion. You have to feel it. Notice the physical signal, name it, and let it move through you. Because when you resist emotion, it gets stuck, literally, in your muscles, your breath, your gut. But when you allow and channel it, that energy becomes fuel. Every single emotion, anger, fear, shame, it's a coded message. It's a tool, not a trap. Right? Self-mastery isn't about suppressing emotions. It's about awareness and skillful action. Right? You become the alchemist, turning raw emotion into clarity, power, and choice. Right? And the first step is always learn to catch that signal. Feel it in your body. Name it without judgment. That's where the art begins. And let's learn a process that you can actually use to transform these emotions, not just to cope with them, but to actually transform them. Because you can't change what you will not face. Right? Emotional alchemy begins the moment you choose to meet your feelings head on. And how do we do it? Okay, step number one, name it. Don't shame it. So how do we do this, right? When you feel anger, shame, or fear, pause. Drop your attention from your head into your body and then ask, what am I feeling right now? Don't judge it. Don't justify it. Just name it. Right? For example, you snap at your wife. Right? Instead of blaming or withdrawing, just say to yourself, that was anger. Right? I feel it in my chest and my fists. Right? You know, this works because naming the emotion switches on your prefrontal cortex, the logical part of your brain. Right? This cools the emotional storm and pulls you back into the driver's seat. Right? Then we move on to step number two, holding space and not reacting. Right? When the emotion hits, instead of acting or running, stay still. Take 3 big deep breaths. Feel the sensation without acting on it or trying to push it away. Right? For example, you feel shame after you've made a mistake at work. Right? Instead of numbing out or exploding, just sit quietly and breathe and let that sensation move through your body. Because this signals safety to your nervous system. Right? It calms the fight or flight response and prevents any emotional hijacking. Okay, and step number three, ask the alchemist questions. Right? Once you've named it and you've held the emotion, ask, what is this emotion trying to tell me? Is there a boundary that I need to set? A truth that I need to speak? A lesson that I need to learn? Right? For example, your anger is a signal that someone crossed the line, or maybe you crossed the line. Right? Your shame is asking you to own your mistake, repair, and forgive yourself. Your fear is alerting you to prepare or challenging you to grow. Right? When you ask these questions, it turns raw emotion into actionable insight. Right? You get the wisdom without the self-destruction. And then step number four, taking aligned action. Right, once you've received the message, channel that energy into a grounded action. That could mean speaking an honest truth, apologising, setting a boundary, or simply just choosing a new response. Right? For example, you use anger to have a tough but honest conversation, calm, clear, direct. You use that fear as motivation to prepare for some upcoming big challenge instead of running away from it. Right? You use shame to repair broken trust, then you let it go. Right? Action completes the cycle. You turn emotion into motion instead of letting it turn into poison. right? And then the last step, just reflect and integrate, right? After the moment has passed, just reflect. What did you learn? How did you handle it differently from how you would have in the past? How can you carry this forward? Right? For example, after you have a conflict, just journal about it, how you felt, what you did and what you'll do better next time. Integration rewires your brain and your story. You see yourself not as a man with anger issues, but as a man who turns emotion into strength. Right? You're not at the mercy of anger, shame, or fear. You are their master. When you choose to meet them, learn from them, and act with intent, that's when you become the master of your emotions. Right? And let's look at how the ancients would have dealt with this. Right? Modern science is finally catching up with what warriors, philosophers, and healers have known for thousands of years. Emotion is a tool, not a curse. Right? And let's look at some of the most respected traditions and how they dealt with anger, shame, and fear. Let's look at the Stoics, right? The obstacle is the way. Right? This Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus, they did not run from their emotions. They used journaling to track and process anger, fear, and shame, asking, what can I learn from this? Right? Their core idea, amor fati, love your fate, right? Including your emotions. Right? Even pain has purpose if you meet it with clarity. So daily journaling, right? When anger rises, right? Ask what boundary has been crossed. What's in my control? What can I choose right now? And then we look at the samurais, stillness and breath. Right? The samurai believed that a man who could control his breath could master his mind, and by extension, his emotions. So before every battle, they practiced breathwork, visualization, and silence. Their training taught the true warrior feels fear but moves anyway. Right, and a tool to use is box breathing. Inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4, and repeat this until the emotion settles. I promise you this works. It's something that I still use on a weekly basis. Then we look at the indigenous, the tribal traditions, right? Brotherhood and rights. If you look at many indigenous cultures, men faced fear, anger, and shame together, right? Through rites of passage, fire circles, and honest storytelling. You weren't expected to man up alone. Brotherhood and community are where the containers for emotional transformation. Right, so find a brotherhood, share your struggle, ask for feedback, support, and accountability. It's up to you to make the first move. But I promise you there's other men out there ready to go on this path with you, and I'm one of them. And then we look at the Buddhist and the Taoist masters, right? Witness without judgment. These traditions teach radical presence, observing emotion without clinging to it or trying to push it away. And meditation isn't about erasing the feeling, but letting them rise and fall like waves. Right, spend 5 minutes daily meditating. Right, I cannot stress how important meditation is for me. I do it minimum twice a day. Just sit there still, breathe, notice any emotion that comes up. Don't chase it away, don't fight it. Just witness it and then let it go. Right, and this is the thing. Every great tradition agrees emotion is not weakness. It's the raw material for strength, for wisdom, and true leadership. You don't have to walk this path alone. Use the tools of the warriors that came before you and create your own daily ritual. This is so important to evolve spiritually, mentally, emotionally, right? Because most men think emotions are just mental or at best a chemical reaction. But this is a reality. Emotion is energy. See, in every tradition worth its salt, the wise understood what you feel is fuel for what you create. Right? Universal law is simple. The law of transmutation says energy cannot be destroyed, it can only be changed. So anger, shame, and fear aren't meant to be repressed or denied. They're meant to be worked with, transformed, and redirected. When you suppress emotion, you lock up life force. That's why you feel heavy, numb, or stuck. But when you meet it head on and channel it, this same energy becomes power, creativity, and presence. And then you look at the law of rhythm. Life moves in cycles, highs and lows, storms and peace. The best men don't resist this, they learn to surf the waves. Emotional mastery isn't about staying calm all the time. It's about riding the rhythm, learning from every rise and every fall, and then returning to center with more wisdom and strength. Right? Spiritually, this is the deepest truth. Your soul isn't here to avoid hard feelings. It's here to grow through them. Every time you face anger, shame, or fear, and then you alchemize it into your purpose, compassion, or leadership, you are living out the hero's journey, right? The one that your bloodline has been waiting for. And this is what I mentioned earlier. The Stoics call this amor fati, loving your fate, even when it burns. Right? The Taoists call this returning to the source. Every great spiritual lineage saw emotion as the crucible of transformation. Right? You're not just fixing yourself, you're upgrading your energy, raising your frequency, and creating a legacy that ripples out your family, your brothers, to the whole entire world. Right? Emotional alchemy isn't just self-mastery, it's spiritual practice. It's living proof that universal law is real. What you work with works with you. What you deny will control you. Right? Meet your emotion head on like a fucking warrior and watch your entire life transform. Okay, and let's look at some realignment rituals that you can use to navigate through your emotional journey. Because see, emotional alchemy isn't a one-off breakthrough, a one-off, session. It's a daily practice, right? And this is how you can transform anger, shame, and fear into strength every day, not just when shit falls apart. Okay, so we'll start off with a daily ritual. So this is just an emotional check-in. So, either in the morning or at night time or even both, right? Pause for 5 minutes. Just scan your body from head to toe. Ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? Right? Where do I notice this in my body? Name that emotion. Don't judge it. Right? And why does this work? Because you get ahead of the emotional build-up. You become the observer and not the reactor. So 5 minutes a day, just spend checking in with yourself. And then we'll look at, the in-moment ritual. This is when something happens, right? So when emotion spikes, an argument, a setback, a stressful decision, just pause. Take 3 to 5 deep, slow breaths. Count the inhale, count the exhale. Put your hands on your chest and your stomach because this helps ground you, right? When you do this, this interrupts the stress response, calms the nervous system, and gives your mind a chance to choose rather than to react. And then we'll have a weekly ritual. This is where you reflect, journal, and reset. So once a week, and I do mine on a Sunday, review your emotional landscape and just journal. Right? What triggered me this week? How did I handle that? What did I learn? Or what can I do differently? And then set a new intention for next week. This week, I will use anger to set boundaries, not to break shit. Right? When you do this, right, reflection locks in your growth, tracks your progress, and makes you accountable to your own evolution. Right? And then the last one is just a brotherhood ritual. This is where you can share and support. So check in with a trusted friend, a mentor, or join a men's group. Right? Share one emotional challenge, one win, one insight. Right? Listen without fixing. Right? Judge without shaming. And when you do this, it bringing accountability. Right? This normalizes emotion and gives you the strength from connection. Right? Ancient brotherhood in a modern world. Because ritual is what makes mastery possible. Emotion will always be part of your life. But when you practice these rituals, you become the man who can meet any feeling and turn that shit into fuel. Okay? And listen, I don't pretend to have all the answers. I'm still very much a work in progress. But I know one thing for sure. I'm much better at dealing and handling my emotions than I used to be. Right? And there's a part of it, I haven't told this to anyone. Okay? And, this wasn't when I was, in some breakdown, prison or addiction. This is after I got better, right? After I got clean, built my body, started helping other men. And from the outside, everything looked great, right? I was showing up, I was leading, I was finally becoming the man that I thought that I wanted to be, right? But this one night, and I'll never forget it, right? I was in my kitchen. The house was all quiet. The kids were in their bed. My wife had fell asleep on the couch, and I was just standing in the kitchen. Now, in my kitchen, I've got a dining room and I've got this big mirror, and I was just staring into the mirror, and I felt my chest was all tight, and my hands were, and I was grinding my teeth, and my mind was going overtime. And I didn't understand why I felt so angry, right? Why I felt so ashamed, why I felt so alone, right? I was doing everything that I thought I was supposed to be doing, right? There was no crisis, there was no argument, but the emotion inside me was fucking horrific, right? It was volcanic, if that's even a term to describe it. And it was just all these years of pain and pressure building up and nowhere to go. And it just hit me, right? And I had what I can only describe as a panic attack, right? I genuinely thought I was about to have a heart attack, right? And I was thinking in my head, I'm going to have to go to the hospital, but I was too scared to go and wake my wife up to get her all worried. And so I was also, I was too ashamed, I was too confused, and I didn't know what to do. So I just dropped to the kitchen floor and I just sat with my hands on my knees and I just breathed. I just sat there breathing big, deep breaths. And for the first time in my life, I didn't fight the emotion. I didn't numb it. I didn't try to justify it. I didn't try to push it down or escape it. I felt it, all of it. Right? I'd been carrying every heavy emotion like a soldier with no fucking weapon, trying to man up, right? Handle it like I always had. But the reality was I wasn't handling shit. I was suppressing it all. And see that night, it was a massive realization because I realized that, see that savage in me, that warrior, I was fucking tired. And it wasn't from the battle, it was from hiding from my wounds, my pain, my anger. And this is the thing, the anger wasn't random, it was grief. The shame wasn't weakness. It was a call to return to who I really was. And see that fear? It wasn't fear of failure. It was a fear of living the rest of my life disconnected from my own heart. And I only know that now looking back. Because that night became a turning point. And not because I had an epiphany moment and I figured everything out. No, because I made the decision that I wasn't going to go through that shit again. Right? I was done pretending I was fine. I was done hiding my feelings, done carrying the rage, the guilt, and the fear like a curse, instead of learning how to transmute that into clarity and courage. Right? And that's when I started to study the Stoics, the samurais, the Vikings, the warriors who knew how to stand still in the fucking madness. And I had always felt this pull towards ancient warrior codes, especially the Vikings. And if you'd have saw me back then, right, I looked the part, right, dreadlocks. I was doing runs every day. I was the full warrior aesthetics. But after that night, I studied them deeply and went full on, all in and studying these different warrior cultures. And that even led me to build my first 12-week coaching program called the Warriors of Reality. And that was a fusion of ancient warrior teachings from across all cultures. And by creating that, it forced me to study them deeply, to live it, to walk it, to embody what I was teaching. And it changed me, right? Anger became focus, shame became humility, fear became fuel. Now, see when these emotions rise, which they fucking do rise, right? All the time. I don't avoid them. I welcome them. And not because they're easy, because I know they help me grow. They're sacred. That is the mirror, brother, right? Not the moment you break, but the moment that you meet yourself in the silence, in the chaos, in the madness, and you realize, right, you were never weak for feeling. You were powerful the moment you choose to feel fully and then alchemize that shit and become the man you were always meant to be. Okay? And this isn't just about mastering anger, shame, or fear for yourself. It's about breaking cycles that have run in your bloodline for generations. It's about becoming the man that your son, your daughter, your partner, your brothers, your community can count on. Right? Not because you never feel, but because you know how to turn emotion into wisdom, strength, and love. Emotional alchemy is a legacy practice. Every time you meet your emotions with courage, you set a new standard. You show others, especially the next generation, that it's not weak to feel, it's powerful to transform. Right? Your family will remember you, not as the man who exploded or withdrew, but as the man who stood strong, owned his story, and used every fucking challenge as fuel for growth. And this is my challenge to you. Become the man who runs towards his emotions, not away from them. Use what once broke you to build the future you desire and you deserve. Right? For you and every single man that follows your lead. This is how a savage becomes a sage. This is how the wounded warrior becomes a wise king. And this is the code that we live by, starting from right fucking now. Right? And here's your field mission this week. Right? Pick one emotion: anger, fear, or shame. See when it shows up, don't run from it. Pause, name it, breathe into it. Ask, what is this shit teaching me right now? And then choose a new response. Journal what happens, what you learned, what shifted. Right? If you need a ritual, try the daily emotional check-in. Right? The breath anchor or the weekly reflection. And if you catch yourself falling into these old patterns, just remember, that's not failure. That's a signal to try again, but this time with more presence. Okay? drop a comment below. Which emotion are you working on this week? Right? What did you discover when you leaned into it instead of running away? Right? Share your wins, your struggles, your insights. This is a brotherhood that I want to help grow. If this video helped, you got any value from it, hit the like, the subscribe, notification bell, and share it with a man who needs to hear this message. And see if you want to go deeper, then check the description for how to connect to the Awakened Savage community. This is still a project in the process of constructing. I'm still learning, but I have got the initial phase done, and it will be something that will transform over the next few months, hopefully. Okay, because see, emotional alchemy, it's not a one-time fix. It's something that we need to commit to and do on a daily basis. And that's what I want this community to do. I want to set a new standard, right? Have a new breed of savage walking this earth. Okay, and as always, I love you guys. Thanks for being with me on this journey. I truly appreciate you from the bottom of my heart. And I'll catch you on the next one. Got a video here, and you can subscribe here. Take care. Bye.